Hey there, welcome back to Story Slices, where we slice through the best Reddit tales just for you. Let's dive right into the first story. The first one is the Tittle story, and it starts like this. This whole ordeal still feels surreal, even though it's been several months since everything went down. I hope you all can learn something from my experience with an absolutely insane HOA president who decided my personal pool was suddenly community property. Some background about me. I'm a software developer who's been working from home for the last 5 years. I spent nearly a decade saving every penny I could to buy my dream home. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a modest 3-bedroom in a nice neighborhood with enough yard space for what I always wanted, my own swimming pool. When I finally closed on the house 3 years ago, I immediately started planning the pool installation. I spent months researching contractors, getting multiple quotes, and making sure I understood all the permits and requirements. This wasn't a cheap above-ground setup. I invested over $50,000 in a beautiful in-ground pool with proper fencing, safety features, and landscaping around it to create my personal oasis. I followed every building code, got all the necessary permits, and passed every inspection with flying colors. The neighborhood was great initially. Quiet, friendly neighbors who respected boundaries, and a fairly hands-off HOA that mostly focused on making sure lawns were maintained and houses weren't painted neon colors. I paid my dues on time and never had any issues. That all changed about 6 months ago when our HOA president moved away and a new family moved into their house. The wife, who I'll just call HOA Karen, immediately ran for the open position and won, mainly because nobody else wanted the job. Little did we know what a nightmare she would become. Within 2 weeks of taking over, things started changing. The first few changes were minor, more frequent violation notices for trivial things like garbage cans being visible from the street for too long or grass being half an inch too tall. Nothing too concerning, just annoying. Then came the letter. I still remember coming home from a grocery run and finding it stuck in my door. Official HOA letterhead, formal language, the works. As I read it, I genuinely thought it was some kind of bizarre joke. Per Community Bylaw 7.3.4, all recreational water features exceeding 10,000 gallons must be registered as community amenities. Your property has been identified as containing an unregistered community pool. Please submit the attached pool schedule form and prepare to accommodate community access hours, 2 to 7 p.m. daily, beginning this Saturday. I read it 3 times. Convinced I was missing something. There was no way this was real. I'd read the HOA bylaws thoroughly before purchasing my home, and there was absolutely nothing about private pools becoming community property. I immediately went online to double-check the most recent version of the bylaws. Nothing even close to what she was claiming existed. I thought maybe there was some misunderstanding, so I called the HOA management company. The representative seemed as confused as I was and said she'd look into it. I then emailed HOA Karen directly, politely explaining that I believed there was a mistake and my private pool was exactly that, private property that I paid for and maintained. Her response came the next morning and left me speechless. She wrote that the HOA board had recently voted to classify larger pools as community amenities since they increase property values for everyone and should therefore benefit all residents. She mentioned that the bylaw would be officially updated at the next printing but was effective immediately. I was furious but tried to remain calm. I replied asking for minutes of this board meeting, as I had never received notice of such a vote taking place. She never responded to that email. 2 days later, while working in my home office, I noticed movement in my backyard through the window. To my shock, HOA Karen was in my yard, taking photos of my pool area and measuring the deck space with a tape measure. I immediately went outside and asked what the hell she thought she was doing on my property without permission. "I'm just finalizing details for the community pool schedule," she said with this smug smile. "We need to know capacity limits and what equipment needs to be purchased." "This is not a community pool," I told her firmly. "This is my private property. You are trespassing right now, and I'm asking you to leave." She rolled her eyes. "The HOA has authority to inspect properties for compliance. And speaking of compliance, we'll need a copy of your gate key by tomorrow for community access." "Absolutely not," I said. "There will be no community access. This pool was built with my money, on my property, and is maintained with my time and resources. The HOA has no right to claim it as community property." That's when her friendly facade dropped completely. "Look, pools increase property values for everyone, so everyone should benefit. That's just fair. The board has already voted, and flyers have already been distributed to the neighborhood announcing the new community pool hours starting this weekend." I was floored. "You distributed flyers about my pool without my knowledge or consent? It's not just your pool anymore," she snapped. "And if you don't comply with the community amenity bylaws, you'll be fined $100 per day for non-compliance." I told her in no uncertain terms to get off my property and that under no circumstances would my pool be open to the neighborhood. As she left, she turned and said, "You'll regret not being a team player. This could have been so much easier for everyone." I immediately started documenting everything. I took photos of my property, gathered all my pool installation permits and property deeds, and sent a formal email to the entire HOA board challenging this vote that apparently took place without proper notice to all members. Only one board member responded, seeming genuinely confused about what I was talking about. He said there had been a casual discussion at the last meeting about potentially building a community pool somewhere in the future, but no vote about existing private pools. This confirmed my suspicion that HOA Karen was operating completely outside her authority. The weekend arrived, and I was tense all morning, watching my security cameras and wondering if people would actually show up expecting to use my pool. Around 1:30 p.m., I had to run to the grocery store for about an hour. When I returned, my worst fears were realized. There were 4 or 5 families in my backyard, in swimsuits, with beach towels and coolers, and several kids already splashing in my pool. HOA Karen was sitting on my patio furniture like she owned the place, holding court and explaining pool rules to the group. I couldn't believe my eyes. I set my groceries down in the kitchen and immediately went out back, asking what they thought they were doing on my private property. HOA Karen stood up with this condescending smile. "We're just enjoying the new community pool during the scheduled hours. Everything's been approved by the HOA board." "This is not a community pool," I said, trying to keep my voice even despite my rising anger. "This is my private property. None of you have permission to be here. I need everyone to leave immediately." The other families looked confused, glancing between me and HOA Karen. One of the dads asked her, "I thought you said this was officially designated as a community amenity." "It has been," she insisted. "He's just being difficult. The HOA has authority over community amenities regardless of property lines." "That's completely false," I said, "and I want to know how you all got into my yard. My gate was locked." HOA Karen smugly pulled out a key. "The HOA has access rights to all properties for inspection and maintenance purposes." That was the last straw. I announced to everyone that they were trespassing on private property, that no such community pool designation existed, and that they needed to leave immediately or I would call the police. As the families started gathering their things, looking embarrassed and confused, HOA Karen pulled out her phone. "Go ahead and stay," she told them. "I'm calling the police myself. He can't harass community members using a community facility." I went inside and called the police too, explaining the situation as calmly as I could. I then grabbed my deed documents and turned on my phone's recording app before heading back outside. When 2 police officers arrived about 15 minutes later, HOA Karen immediately approached them, speaking rapidly about how I was harassing community members and violating HOA bylaws. She actually pulled out a document that showed some kind of pool usage schedule with my address clearly listed. The officers looked confused, asking for clarification about whether this was a community pool or private property. I presented my property deed and explained that this was my private residence and private pool that I had personally paid to install. "The HOA recently designated it as a community amenity," HOA Karen insisted, showing them her paperwork. I calmly explained that no such valid designation existed, that no proper vote had been taken, and that I had never received notice of or agreed to any such change. I also pointed out that she had somehow made a copy of my gate key without my permission and was using it to access my property when I wasn't home. One of the officers asked her directly, "Ma'am, do you have documentation showing that this homeowner agreed to designate his private pool as a community facility?" She hesitated before saying, "Well, when he purchased in an HOA community, he agreed to abide by all bylaws, including amendments." "But this amendment doesn't actually exist," I pointed out. "And even if the HOA wanted to make such a change, they couldn't do it without proper procedure and a vote that included notifying all members." The conversation continued for a while, with HOA Karen becoming increasingly flustered as her story started falling apart. Eventually, the officers asked everyone to leave my property, explaining that without clear documentation showing my consent, they had to treat this as private property and the others as trespassing. As people were leaving, I overheard HOA Karen telling a few families that this was just a temporary setback and that they should come back next weekend once she sorted out the paperwork problems. After everyone left, I thanked the officers and asked if there was any way to get a copy of their report for my records. They provided me with an incident number and suggested I consider filing for a restraining order if the harassment continued. That night, I could barely sleep. I kept thinking about how easily my privacy had been violated and how many people felt entitled to use something I had worked so hard for. I decided this needed to be addressed comprehensively, not just as a one-time incident. The next day, I started researching real estate attorneys who specialized in HOA disputes. I found one with excellent reviews and scheduled a consultation. I also installed additional security cameras covering my entire yard and pool area, and changed the locks on my gate. Over the next week, I documented 3 separate instances when HOA Karen tried to access my backyard using her key, only to find the locks changed. My cameras caught her trying different keys and eventually leaving frustrated. I saved all this footage. Through neighborhood gossip, I learned something even more disturbing. HOA Karen had been collecting $50 pool maintenance fees from interested families, supposedly to cover community pool chemicals and equipment. She had collected hundreds of dollars under completely fraudulent pretenses. My attorney confirmed what I already suspected. The HOA had no legal right to designate my private property as a community amenity. She helped me draft a cease and desist letter to both HOA Karen personally and the HOA board as a whole, demanding an immediate retraction of any communications suggesting my pool was community property. We also filed a formal complaint with the County Housing Authority regarding HOA overreach and potential fraud. My attorney discovered that HOA Karen had been involved in similar situations in her previous neighborhood, where she had been removed from a board position for misappropriation of funds. The final step was calling for an emergency HOA meeting, following proper procedural requirements that HOA Karen had conveniently ignored. I made sure every homeowner received proper written notice, and I prepared a comprehensive presentation of evidence. The meeting took place in our neighborhood clubhouse 2 weeks later. Nearly every homeowner attended, which was unprecedented. I could feel HOA Karen's glare as I set up my laptop for the presentation. I started by introducing myself and calmly explaining the situation from the beginning. I showed copies of my property deed, the pool installation permits, and inspection certificates. I then displayed the actual HOA bylaws, highlighting that there was absolutely no provision about private recreational facilities becoming community property. Next, I showed excerpts from state property laws that protected homeowners from exactly this type of HOA overreach. I explained the proper procedures for bylaw amendments, emphasizing that no such procedures had been followed in this case. The room was dead silent as I moved to the next part, showing security footage of HOA Karen entering my property without permission on multiple occasions, using a key she had no right to possess. I played the audio from my police encounter, where she essentially admitted to using her position to access my property. The bombshell came when I revealed information about the pool maintenance fees she had been collecting. I asked if anyone in the room had paid such fees, and several hands went up. I suggested they might want to request refunds, as no such authorized fee existed. Finally, I shared documentation from HOA Karen's previous neighborhood, showing a pattern of similar behavior. By this point, her face had gone from angry to pale, and several board members were whispering among themselves. When I finished, the HOA vice president immediately called for a vote to address the situation. The board voted unanimously to remove HOA Karen from her position effective immediately and issue a formal apology to me for the unauthorized actions taken in the HOA name. They also voted to amend the bylaws specifically to protect homeowners' private property from any similar attempts in the future, and to require the return of all improperly collected pool fees with documentation of such returns to be provided at the next meeting. As people were leaving, several neighbors approached me to apologize for the misunderstanding. One family who had been in my backyard that day was mortified when they realized they had trespassed on my property based on HOA Karen's lies. They explained that she had made it sound completely official and above board. The aftermath was satisfying on multiple levels. HOA Karen was not only removed from the board but faced potential criminal charges for trespassing, fraudulent misrepresentation, and collecting unauthorized fees. The investigation is still ongoing, but my attorney believes there will likely be financial penalties at minimum. The HOA issued a formal written apology to me and clarified to all residents that private pools remain private property. They also implemented new transparency requirements for board meetings and votes to prevent similar situations in the future. Word spread quickly through neighboring communities, and I've actually been contacted by several homeowners facing similar HOA overreach issues. I've been happy to share my documentation and attorney recommendations with them. The most ironic twist came just last month. HOA Karen's house went up for sale, and she moved away, apparently unable to face her neighbors after everything came to light. The family that purchased her house turned out to be lovely people who respect boundaries completely. Last weekend, I hosted a small pool party and specifically invited some of the neighbors who had been most supportive throughout this ordeal. It felt good to reclaim my space and enjoy it on my own terms, sharing it by choice rather than coercion. I learned some valuable lessons through all this, mainly about the importance of documenting everything, knowing your rights as a property owner, and not letting entitled people walk all over you just because they have a position of minor authority. I also learned how quickly people will follow someone who speaks with unearned confidence, even when what they're saying makes no sense. To anyone dealing with HOA issues, My advice is simple. Know your bylaws better than they do. Keep records of everything. And don't be afraid to stand your ground when you know you're right. A little backbone and proper documentation can go a long way. The next one is entitled People Story. I mostly need to get this off my chest. I won't lie. Charlie lives 15 to 20 minutes away by car. We've been dating 5 months and it used to be my pleasure to drive up there and spend a few nights at his place. I knew his parents are abusive and scream at him for nothing sometimes, physically assault him and take away his phone and computer. He will be able to get out of there by the end of the school year, when he gets an internship. His plan for the future is to have very limited to absolutely no contact with his crap family. I tried to make sure his family liked me, and it worked. I always tried to be very agreeable and nice to them, and since they love keeping up appearances anyway, it worked pretty well. Some time ago, I'm going to guess about 3 to 4 weeks ago, I was staying over on a Sunday evening and I didn't have my car, because a friend of ours would come drive us to school in the morning. The parents had been away all day. They came home in the evening, pretty drunk actually, and Charlie's little sister, 17F, went to complain that we ate too much lasagna or something. Okay, sibling trouble. His parents then proceeded to severely overreact to dumb sibling trouble by calling him in the kitchen, berating him, and screaming at him. He apologized and left me in the room while he went there, told me not to worry too much and this is normal to him, it happens all the time. So there I was alone in his room, in the dark, absolutely panicked because nothing terrifies me more than people screaming, helpless, alone, in danger and with no way out, because I didn't even have my car there. I had been in this situation before and it went about the same way. I don't know how to really convey how terrified I was. So I was having one hell of a panic attack and crying like I was actively trying to shoot my eyes out of my sockets, and I hear a bang and louder screaming, so I think they're attacking Charlie and I panic, some more, and go to the kitchen, again, in tears. I arrive and attempt to say something like, "Is everything okay in here?" It comes out as, "What is wrong with you people?" with a broken, tearful, pathetic, screamy voice. Obviously I still regret this. It sounds like a bad excuse, but I wasn't really in control here. Next thing I know, Charlie's father, a terrifying mother ducker, is millimeters away from my face, screaming at me so hard I think he actually spluttered on my face. My first instinct was to block him with my arm and push him away as hard as I could. I'm frail. And from there my boyfriend finished the job by pushing him the hell away. It was a mess. Everyone was screaming. I was trying to get my phone, and kept repeating, "I'm calling my dad, I'm calling my dad." In the end, I didn't. I was still sobbing so hard my chest was actually hurting. At some point I thought I couldn't breathe anymore. When Charlie was done pushing the whole family away from me, he gently took me by the shoulders and led me outside to get away and calm down. He was very sweet and patient and seemed to know exactly what to do, including getting me out of there. His mother came out a few times on the doorstep to glare at us wordlessly. Charlie said, "Go away. Can't you see she's not doing well? Can't you see this isn't normal behavior? She's not used to it." She tried arguing that I wasn't to speak to them this way. Don't know if this is the correct wording, but he made her leave. He let me calm down, said it was a normal reaction. I kept apologizing and he didn't let me. He let me go inside to pack my bags and talk to his family in the meantime so I didn't have to face them. We left through the window so they wouldn't try to stop us, and went to seek refuge at his aunt's place. Everyone there was very sweet and welcoming. Everyone in the family knows Charlie's mom is a monster. I haven't faced Charlie's parents since. I refused to. Charlie told me he told his mom this isn't normal and she said, "Do you think she's normal with her gross scars all over her arms?" I used to self-harm and I haven't done it in years. My scars are very faded. She's just a disgusting, vile woman. The thought of talking to them makes me sick. I've ignored them the last time I saw them from far away. Last time I picked up my boyfriend I was very scared just from being in my locked car in front of the house for 5 minutes. I know I'm not over it and need to process it. I was actually hoping this thread would help me overcome the ADHD and finally text my therapist. My boyfriend seems to understand that I don't want to come back. I told him I probably wouldn't apologize to his parents, and didn't want to see them. At least for now, I just can't. He seems to be getting sort of tired of it though. I feel bad that he has to come over. We both live with our families, though I try to make it as comfortable as possible and my family likes him. He has expressed today that he's sort of upset that he has to choose between being home and being with me. I don't think he understands how terrified I was and I don't know how to tell him so he understands. I have this feeling that he's so used to it he just thinks I should stop feeling bad after a few days. That's sort of the way he acts sometimes, though he keeps telling me it's alright. I know it bothers him. I don't know what to do. Update: what happened in the original post is, I had a boyfriend who has a physically abusive family. The boyfriend would convince me to stay over at his house all the time, because I had a license and he was too lazy to get his. He insisted I play nice with his disgusting family so his life would be easier. I did so because I had lots of sympathy for his situation. He knew about my history of abuse and how scared I was of his father and how terrified I could get of everything sometimes, PTSD, but nagged me on staying over at his place because he didn't feel like going over to mine. That particular night he had convinced me to stay over without my car as a friend would pick us up to go to school in the morning. I forget why I didn't have my car, sorry. His parents came home and started screaming at him. What I described as a panic attack was an emotional flashback to severe childhood abuse. When I heard what sounded like someone hitting my ex in the kitchen, I went there because I was afraid for him, and reverted to what would sometimes end the screaming matches in my family when I was younger and my brother was there, crying out for them to stop. In my family it leads to them switching for screaming to insulting me and being mad at me more quietly. I don't know why this works. Here it resulted in the father screaming in my face and me pushing him away instinctively. Some posters commented on me saying I'll call my dad, and not doing it. I didn't explain that I wouldn't have called my dad as I felt like this was all my fault. I said that to introduce the idea that another adult could hear them be this way and see if it would affect their behavior. Later we had to flee out of the window to go my ex's aunt's. My ex caught me writing the last post, laughed at comments that said that he shouldn't want me to go back there and agreed with comments that said my decision was stupid, which I guess it was. I didn't dare talk back to commenters and pretended like my ex 100% rejected his parents and was a good person. What I didn't say is that he never got a job during the summer despite multiple family members offering him easy gigs, always wanted to go out for fast food and let me pay, told me that not everyone was as wealthy as I was when I complained. I'd gotten a summer job at a clinic despite crippling yet undiagnosed PTSD making me cry and hurt myself every morning and evening because I was so scared of interacting with people. 2 months after that post he got tired of coming over and nagged me into apologizing to his parents. I went back, despite being absolutely terrified just being in the house. When he stayed over at my place where my parents left us alone he stayed up all night playing Fortnite despite me telling him I couldn't sleep. He didn't care. I was severely sleep deprived all the time. He would smoke on the balcony despite me asking him not to, stomp around the house at night when everyone was asleep, and then would sleep until sometimes 6 p.m., leaving me to wait around the house for him until it was dark and the day was practically over for me. He had no respect for the routine I'd set up for myself to exercise, be healthy and keep my head above the water. He got mad at me the one time I self-harmed, hit myself without thinking and left a bruise during a breakdown that took me days to recover from, then told his female friend over Discord what I'd done after she admitted to doing the same, after he comforted her the way he never comforted me and told her she was beautiful and unique. I had to buy him his tobacco, smoking paper and filters to keep him from being horrible. He said he couldn't help it when he didn't smoke for a while. At the time I was still trying to quit smoking, and he kept giving me cigarettes and smoking around me, and not having a cig made me upset but not to the point of being mean to my partner. He never brushed his ducking teeth, got really ducking mad at me when I asked him to brush his teeth and ignored me. Combine this with 20 cigarettes a day. I was prescribed Paxil and it did nothing but give me bad side effects. When I went off it, it gave me terrible withdrawal symptoms, weird electric shocks, flu-like symptoms, and terrible, terrible despair and crying. I once spent an entire night crying my eyes out and being sick while he ignored me and played Fortnite, not even turning off the screen to let me sleep. He would punch walls when he was mad. I would show up at his house to go to our planned date and he would be drunk and I had to sit down and wait for hours until he could move without puking. He would tell me he'd come to my house in the evening and be 5 hours late. Once he literally went to the cinema with a friend without telling me after he said he'd come over. He laughed at me when I was upset. He dragged me to parties when I said I was afraid of people yelling and being drunk. He got mad at me until I went. He was either upset at me when I had to leave because I was terrified, or pretended to care about my well-being for 5 minutes and stayed at the party while I drove home sobbing, until he drank a bottle of vodka and ate 5 edibles at once, because he thought that was some weak crap, and then I had to come pick him up in my pajamas and hold him all night until he stopped crying about people's faces being made of colors. But you know the very worst in that relationship? I stayed while he was passed out drunk. I kept giving my money away after I said I didn't like it. I bought him more cigarettes. I didn't kick him out of my house. I drove him everywhere. I let him make fun of me and duck with my head. I went back to his abusive household and played nice. So much of it is on me. I'm so very mad at him, but really I am so mad at myself. I can't believe this was all I thought I was worth. I moved to the UK from the south of France in May for an internship. I left him after he told me I was just too ducking lazy to make food and I should stop ducking complaining because he's got real problems. In response to me being exhausted all the time and being literally too scared to go outside and go grocery shopping. Panic attacks level scared. His problems were him doing badly in school and not caring about it, and sleep apnea. I'd been trying to get him to see the doctor and treat for 6 months. At this point he still wasn't trying to move out and was content letting him mom iron his t-shirts, and playing video games all day and night while being silent on Discord calls with me. I'm still in the UK. I made a few friends. I discovered I have CPTSD. It's very hard and I've been very alone. I feel a lot of shame. I've been making sense of my life and relationships up till now. I needed to write this somewhere. People will see it. You don't have to stay with people who let you cry your eyes out over your dead cat while ignoring you and complaining that your parents' food is disgusting and he wants to go to Burger King and let you pay for it. Unlikely thanks to that one commenter on my previous post that said I probably have PTSD and I should get out of that clusterduck that we all laughed at and downvoted at the time. Cheers, mate. Edit, wasn't expecting so many comments. I can't answer everyone, but I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for the support. The next one is entitled People Story. My sister, Grace, and I were always very close when we were growing up, and never really had any major issues with each other. We had the normal sibling rows, but nothing significant. As she was older, I always kind of looked up to her. Our mother passed away when we were young and lung cancer got my father the same year that I went away for college, when I was 19, so my sister is the only immediate family that I have left. One day, when I was 20, Grace sat me down and said that the two of us needed to talk. She said, in essence, that she didn't think it was a good idea for the two of us to stay in contact any longer. She said that it wasn't anything that I did or said, and that it was because she didn't think it was healthy for herself to continue staying into contact with me. She wouldn't get any more specific than that, and it was clear that this wasn't a mutable position for her. I've gone over it dozens of times in my head, and I've never really figured out exactly what she meant. The two of us weren't codependent or extremely close. We would talk on the phone maybe once or twice a week, and would see each other maybe 2 or 3 times a month. Eventually I realized that thinking about it wouldn't change anything, so there was really no point in trying to understand her reasoning. Since then, she hasn't contacted me at all, until now. I've had the urge on a number of occasions to try to find her, but ultimately I respect people's boundaries, and if she didn't want to see me, then that is her decision to make. Recently, someone left a voicemail at my extension at the company I worked for. I knew right away from their voice that it was her. She said that it was her. She knows it has been a long time, left a callback number, and asked if I could call her and we could get together and talk. I'm not quite sure how she even found me. I don't use any sort of social media, except for LinkedIn, but my company lists the names, schools, etc. of their executives publicly, so that might be it, which would explain why she called me there. Honestly, I really have missed her. However, I know that it's wrong of me to say this, but I'm honestly quite angry with her. She wasn't there for me when I graduated college. She wasn't there for me when I got my master's. She wasn't there for me for 6 whole years. I really want to see her and maybe finally get some answers, but I don't know if that's a good idea. Should I contact her back and meet up? Or would it just be a better idea to ignore her / tell her that I'm not interested in seeing her? Update: I did end up calling her back. I wasn't prepared to meet her right away, so I took a suggestion given to me in the previous thread and gave her my email. I told her I would rather us email together for a while before getting together, and that she could start by telling me what happened, where she has been for all this time, and why she's seeking me out now. She initially sent me an extremely long email, so I'll just provide an outline what happened. So, according to her, when we were around 15 to 16, she began to develop some inappropriate feelings towards me. She said in the beginning it wasn't anything serious, but she knew it was wrong. During the period in which our father got sick and eventually passed away, she started to rely upon me more and more, which apparently made these feelings more intense. She felt like she couldn't be a good sibling to me like she felt that I needed at the time, and that continued contact between us would only make things worse. So she thought it was best if we just broke things off, like pulling off a band-aid, I guess. She says that she knows things might have been hard for me, so she's going to try to be honest and open with me going forward. So she admitted that she doesn't think that she's completely over it, but that I've been on her mind lately and she really doesn't like the way we left things. Since we've stopped talking, apparently she's been doing quite well for herself. She ended up finishing her CS degree and has been working as a software developer at a game development studio. After emailing back and forth for about a day or so, I agreed to meet her for coffee, and we planned to chat for 30 minutes or so. It went really well, and I was pretty happy to see her. We ended up talking and catching up for about an hour and 20 minutes, before I had to leave for a video chat I had scheduled. All in all, I think this situation is very bittersweet for me. It's relieving to have some sort of closure / explanation after all this time, and it was really nice seeing her, and I look forward to maybe gradually including her in my life in the future. That being said, there is certainly a part of me that is very squicked out by the whole thing and would have preferred to be left in the dark or lied to. Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow at Story Slices.